It's basically a sort of a semi-permanent contract. It's for sort of 3 months to 10 months.
So this is obviously a surprise.
But that's why I thought you might want to know. Yeah.
Well, what happens to Steve?
Well, Steve will be the deputy chief. I mean, the way I see it is that this is probably going to save Steve's opportunity to become the next chief, because you know the poison environment that we have right now. Anybody we put in there is not going to last very long, and Steve's going to get blamed for this. So he will be deputy chief and continue that way, and then I think we'll have the opportunity to become the next chief.
Well, this is, I guess the problem I have with this is there's been no process, there's no transparency, there's no sending out a call for people to apply, and we're in the midst of a crisis, and he's been the acting chief for one day, and he's going to be replaced tomorrow.
I mean, I feel like he knows that, because I had a conversation with him yesterday, and I sort of intimated to him that we're looking to bring someone in with, you know, knowledge and experience and a team with them to bring this thing to an end. And, you know, I said to him, I recognize if we were to put you in there right now, like, you own this. I phoned him last week, by the way, Jim, and I asked him what he would do differently if he was the chief right now, and he said nothing, which didn't instill a lot of confidence, actually. But I think in the long term that he will have a lot better chance of being able to be the chief of police in Ottawa if he doesn't own this right now.
So are you bringing this to the board today?
The board's already approved it.
When did they have a meeting to approve that?
Yesterday.
If I'm reading your press release saying it's already at work to put in place a new command structure, we'll be appointing a new chief very soon. My understanding was that we were going to get through this with Steve. So it's a done deal, basically.
Well, I haven't signed the contract. I mean, if you want to tell me that you don't think you want me to sign that contract, I mean, I can go back to the board and tell them that you would rather not. But I actually believe this is the right thing to do, Jim.
Okay,
Well, I this has come as a big surprise. We're in the eve of some potential action. Obviously, something's going to happen. We think, I don't have any inside information, but one assumes in the next couple of days. I think this would be very destabilizing to the organization to have someone who knows nothing about Ottawa, who's, I don't know, this guy, don't recognize his name. Maybe he was a deputy when I was there, but it doesn't ring a bell.
He is very well liked. The Solicitor General told me that the Soldan's office, our advisor on our board, is a guy named Graham White. He told me that he called it an elegant solution. He thinks it's a very good solution on an interim basis for Ottawa.
Rap party?
Anyways, I don't support this. I think this is the wrong approach at the wrong time. We're going into the midst of what could be a very serious operational activity. And the sideshow becomes, oh, by the way, Steve, we're shunning you aside to a guy who doesn't know where Queen is.
I respectfully disagree. Like, I really believe that this is, one, in Steve's interest, and two, in the community interest, to get some people with a lot more depth in this kind of stuff than we have internally to Ottawa Police right now to get this done. And, Steve, there's a lot of internal angst. I don't know how familiar you are with it, Jim, but there's a lot of internal angst in that organization. I was just talking to someone right now that was telling me how they've been called off, and Steve's part of it. So there's internal angst in the top ranks right now. And they're infighting. You probably know a little bit about the infighting that's been going on in the top ranks, but I really think actually bringing someone that rises above that wouldn't be a bad idea.
Well, I guess process has been obviously secretive. You've had no opportunity to consult the BIPOC community or other members
No, it's only a short-term solution. It's not the next chief of Ottawa. It's an interim until we do a search for a chief. I mean, I can't put Steve Bell in there to be the new chief without a search either.
No.
This is protecting him.
I think I've seen the last of Screwball.
Well, no, listen, he's entitled to apply like anyone else is who has the qualifications. So, you know, I don't think there's a conflict because he's the acting chief that he can apply. But right now, it's basically a sole source contract that we are about to sign, which I fundamentally, anyway, you know, it's your call, but I won't support that, and I think it'll destabilize the organization.
Okay, well, that's why I raised it. I mean, I thought you should know you are the mayor. So if you're telling me not to do it, then I will not do it. I'll go and have another board meeting and tell them we're going to have to change again. And I'll say, I don't know what I'll say right now. Is there a vote of non-confidence in me or the board coming to council?
I haven't seen any motions. I think you're frozen, Diane. Hello?
Let me just text
Can you
her.
hear me?
I'll text her, see if she's disconnected.
I've just got a picture of Diane that's frozen.
Yeah, I think she might be frozen. I have it too.
Hold on.
Well, anyway,
I'm just going to rejoin. Jessica, tell him I'll rejoin.
Oh, you're good now, Diane. You're good now.
Am I back?
You're back.
Okay, Jim, what do you know about what's coming that impacts me today or the conversation that's happening? I think I've worked really hard for the last 20 days. I think it would be a courtesy to at least let me know what's coming at me.
yeah, I'm going to talk to some councillors today, as I try to before every meeting, and see what their plans are, and if I get any sense of what's going on, I'll try to give you a heads up.
Would you support a vote of non-confidence in me?
Haven't decided that yet.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Well, listen, I appreciate the heads up. As I said, I hope that there's that you don't rush into this, because I think it would be a mistake at this point, and I think it would undermine Steve Bell to have someone to come in literally 2 or 3 days after what could have been a police action to try to solve this nightmare we're all living through.
There are a lot of people in the upper ranks, just so you understand, that do not support Steve Bell right now, and it's part of what's happening inside. Do you know? Oh, never mind.
What's the changes to the command structure that you're making? Your press release talked about.
It's the advisory body that would come with this new chief that has OPP and everyone else with that kind of experience in terms of organization to get this done.
Okay. Made it into one of
It's
Hamlet's
actually a really good plan, Jim.
It's gotta be a front.
Yeah.
I'd put my money on smuggling.
Okay. Well, listen. Thank you for the heads up, and we'll see you on Zoom later.
Yeah.
Take care. Bye.
I think that might almost be worse than the weapons. Let me know what you find.
Fedoras.
Okay, so that's 10 minutes of your time. So go ahead.
Smoking during the infiltration.
That's what I was trying to avoid. Good afternoon, Councillor Deans. My name is David Michikowski. I act for the Ottawa Police Service. Councillor Deans, am I correct that while Chief Sloly was the chief, he had asked for an increase in the number of officers?
Yes.
And officers had been hired over the last several years, but just to cover attrition. There was a hiring freeze, correct?
Yes.
And as of 2022, I understand that Ottawa Police had less officers, sworn officers, than it did in 2019. Is that correct?
I'll take your word for it.
Could I ask you, please, to turn up OPB 01278? And if we could please go to page 4. You'll see that this was the meeting that you were at, correct?
Yes?
And at this point, Interim Chief Bell was in command,
Yes?
and a question was raised regarding the service's operational plan. And then you got some information from Interim Chief Bell, correct?
Yes?
He provided a briefing. And is it fair to say that you'd got a lot more information as a board on operationally what was going on at the time when Chief Bell became the interim chief?
There was definitely more information provided this day, so yes.
And I believe on page 4, if we go to the paragraph that starts, a question was raised. Yeah, thank you. You'll see a question was raised regarding the ineffective policing having been seen in the city. And it was suggested there were instances in which police could have engaged in enforcement but did not. Am I correct then? The minutes accurately reflect Interim Chief Bell noted that the service had committed to a review of all actions having brought them to their current situation.
Let's not tank our economy any further now, boys.
Yes?
He indicated he would review it. And then if you look 2 paragraphs later, if you go down to the paragraph, a question was raised regarding why roadblocks had not been installed prior to the arrival of any convoys. The service again noted they were supportive of a full review being conducted to identify any mistakes made or laws that required updating. However, their focus at the time was forward-looking, correct?
Yes?
Who doesn't?
Yeah. There's some old police records here. Did you know she's a
And
very
if you go to page 5,
kind of. Yuri's father was kicked off the force.
there was a request in the 3rd paragraph for twice daily updates from the service to the board. And this is because the board wanted to get more information than they felt they'd been getting from Chief Sloly. Is that right?
No wonder she's going so hard on this.
Yeah, I mean, things were really heating up, and I think the board was getting more assertive in demanding information. So yes.
And Interim Chief said he supported increased communications with the board, but twice daily updates wouldn't be possible because from a resource point of view, that's taking a lot of command staff away from time that is needed operationally, correct?
That's right.
And that seemed reasonable to you.
It did.
You talked about not trusting the mayor. Is that correct?
I don't think I talked about it. I think I confirmed in answer to a question that I had recorded that conversation.
And in fact, the person who recorded it, we can hear at the beginning, is Jessica, correct?
Correct.
That's Jessica Bradley?
My executive assistant.
That's Jessica Bradley?
Yes,
And you asked her to record it.
I did.
And that was a Teams meeting, correct?
Right.
Right. And so Teams has a function in which you can record a meeting, but if you do that, it will show that the meeting is being recorded. So that's not what you did, is it?
That's not what we did. I don't know if I knew that or not. As I said earlier to the commissioner, I'm not the leading most expert in anything technical, but I just wanted to make sure that we had an accurate reflection of that meeting.
And you didn't tell the mayor that you were recording that phone call.
I did not, nor did the mayor mention to me that Steve Kanalakis, the city manager, was a silent observer in that room. You heard at the beginning, he said that Serge was in the room, but he failed to mention the city manager was also in the room.
And are you saying that by way of justifying why you recorded it?
No,
and tell?
I don't feel a need to justify why I recorded it.
You don't have any problems with the ethics of recording a conversation and not telling somebody that you're doing it?
I didn't understand there to be any reason not to, and I could see in this particular tense situation where I was hearing rumors that I was going to be unseated, that there might be a reason for me to file an integrity commissioner complaint later, and an accurate record of our conversation might be in order.
Doesn't look good for her.
And
Luckily, she's got people who have her back.
Yeah.
wouldn't you be able to file an accurate record of the conversation by saying, hey, Mayor, I'm taping this conversation?
I've got to pitch it.
I know
Yes, I wouldn't have had any problem with that either. I just failed to do
And
it.
I hope things work out for your friend.
I don't think it
Is-
was calculated.
And is that something you do regularly, tape
No.
conversations?
It's not.
So this just seemed like a good idea to you at the time?
This was a very tense moment. I've been a member of council for 28 years. I take pride in my reputation. I think I've worked hard for the city and for the citizens of our city. And I could see that, you know, my feeling was that at this point, you know, there was a lot of information that was possessed by senior city officials and the mayor that had not been shared with the board. And they felt no reason to do that, even though we had the political oversight. And the only time we seemed to come into their orbit was when they were looking for a scapegoat.
I take it, Councillor Deans, you support openness and transparency.
I do.
And you would agree with me that openness and transparency doesn't include doing a secret recording of a conversation with the mayor, does it?
I would suggest to you, council, that openness and transparency is providing to a commission a fair and reasonable and accurate description of a conversation. And what I said to the mayor is that if he told me not to go ahead with a motion that had been approved by the board, I wouldn't, but he fell short of that. He said he hoped I would reconsider, but he never told me not to. And so if you want to talk about openness and transparency, maybe we could start there.
Could we go back to my question?
Sure.
My question was, would you agree with me that openness and transparency doesn't support doing a secret recording of a conversation with the mayor?
No, I don't think I would.
You don't agree with that?
No, I think these were tense times, and I think that, you know, I felt a need to do that.
And openness and transparency isn't a problem for you?
I think I've been very open and transparent in my career.
And what I understood when I listened to the recording was what you said to the mayor was, if you don't want me to sign the contract, I won't. I heard those exact words on the audio.
Yes, and then you also.
Sorry, I haven't asked my question.
Okay, sorry.
And am I correct that that at the end of that and Mayor Watson's response to that comment was, quote, I think it would be destabilizing. I don't favor it. I don't want it to occur. Was there any doubt in your mind after that conversation that Mayor Watson did not support what you were doing?
No, I agree. Mayor Watson did not support what I was doing, but Mayor Watson does not direct the operations of the board. I'm the chair of a board that had taken a decision. And unless the mayor of the city was directing me not to, then I was going to proceed. And I think I made that clear. I mean, I can understand there's some nuance on the tape. I understand that. But I thought I was quite clear. If you're telling me not to, then I won't, and I'll go back. But he fell short. He said he hoped I would reconsider at the end of that message.
Well, aren't we playing word games?
Oh, no,
Ms.
I don't
Deans?
think so.
Well, let me finish my question if you don't mind. What you said was, quote, "If you don't want me to sign the contract, I won't." And my question to you was there any doubt at the end of that conversation that he did not want you to sign? He can't direct you to not sign it.
No, and I
just asked the
said,
question, don't add the editorial.
Sure.
yeah, I think there were two parts, but perhaps we'd have to play it again. But I said, if you are telling me not to, I won't.
Okay, so
And I understand there's some nuance on the tape, and perhaps he misunderstood what we were saying to each other. But I thought it was quite clear that unless I had a direction from the mayor of the city of Ottawa to overturn a decision of the oversight body that had been taken, then I would proceed. I reported to the board, not to the mayor. I informed the mayor out of courtesy and out of respect for the office of the mayor.
you indicated, I am correct, by the way, when I say the mayor cannot direct you as chair of the Police Services Board to not sign a contract, correct?
Yes, I told him if he did direct me, at that point, I would go back and have another conversation.
One of the things you indicated was that Graham White
Yes,
said that your suggestion of Matt Torrigan was an elegant choice, correct?
an elegant solution, he said.
If I could ask, please, to turn up document ONTO 01121.
Can you repeat the number, Counselor?
I'm sorry, it's ONTO 01121. And you'll see there's an email from Graham White. Graham White was the Police Services Board advisor.
Yes.
And so if you'd be good enough, please, to scroll down. And so, sorry, if we can go up to the first paragraph. Just there, perfect, thank you. Chair Dean stated that Matt Torrigan had tentatively agreed to take the role and asked if the advisor, me, thought that was a good idea. I stated that I could not endorse any person for the role, but that the board needs to have a chief in place ASAP because Chief Sloly's agreement expired at the end of the day. I stated clearly to the board that they are prohibited from not having a chief in place and should take steps to appoint a chief of police as soon as possible. That is what Mr. White's advice to you was?
Yes.
And you talked about the various complaints that you heard about in the Ottawa Police Service, which you described as a poisoned environment, I think?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I take it, in spite of those concerns, you took no steps to investigate whether that was true or not true.
We had taken a lot of steps to delve into the significant issue of workplace sexual violence and harassment inside Ottawa Police. We hired Janice Rubin from Rubin Tomlinson in Toronto. We conducted a 10-month investigation into what was happening inside Ottawa Police with a view to improving the work environment and the culture.
Sure. That related to issues of sexual harassment and sexism in the workplace, correct?
And harassment in the workplace.
Right. And so you did nothing to investigate the specific poisoned environment that apparently you heard about from others and from Chief Sloly. And in your capacity as board chair, you did not investigate.
We forwarded specific concerns to the OCPC for investigation.
And you had not, and there had not yet been any investigation, is that correct?
We had not received a report from the OCPC as to the outcome of their investigation, but it's not the board that investigates themselves. It forwarded to OCPC for investigation.
And so, of course, until you have some sort of investigation, you don't know. You're operating on rumors and innuendo and hearsay, right?
Well, you're operating on perhaps allegations, but they're unsubstantiated until the outcome of an investigation.
And so you indicated that you heard that there was some issue with respect to Deputy Chief Bell. No particulars were provided, and you never investigated that, correct?
Well, we didn't have time to investigate that, but I had heard that Deputy Chief Bell was involved in some of that. Yeah.
And so you thought it was okay to tarnish his reputation and what he had done without any investigation into that.
I don't think I was tarnishing Deputy Chief Bell's reputation, with all due respect. I mean, I felt that we were making a good decision at a very difficult time. And the way I saw it at the time is we were preserving Deputy Chief Bell's reputation.
And you indicated that ultimately Chief Sloly was right, proved to be right.
I believe he was.
Right. And so, and yet when you spoke to the mayor, you recounted that when you spoke to Deputy Chief Bell at the time, and he said to you he would not have done something different, you thought that was a mark against him. And yet you're saying Chief Sloly was correct in what?
Well, it turned out that what he had identified early on as the resource requirement to end the occupation of our city was quite correct. In the midst of that chaos that our city was facing, I was wondering if there was more that could be done, and I phoned Chief Bell. He had a lot of experience inside the Ottawa Police Service, to ask him, frankly, what he might do different, and he said nothing.
And in fact, what he said was that changing the leadership would not be a good thing to do at this point. You phoned him before you'd made the deal with Chief Sloly. You asked him about it, and he showed that he was loyal to the chief. And he said it would be destabilizing to now change leadership, correct?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And you talked about allegations of racism.
I don't think I talked about it. I think I answered a question about it.
And again, am I correct that you had no particulars of it? You weren't faulting anybody. It may be a systemic issue in policing. Is that fair?
Yeah, it was just my observation of what Chief Sloly faced when he got here, racist memes, other things I'm sure you're familiar with that made it very difficult for him early on in his tenure.
And as a result, you entered into an agreement to pay Chief Sloly how much money to terminate his contract?
So Commissioner, I'm sure there are 1,000 people who want to be heard on this issue. I have no idea how that could possibly be relevant to the mandate of the commission.
I don't see why it isn't.
That's not the test.
Well, the test is, it's a pretty broad mandate, Commissioner, that you have. You're looking into all of the circumstances. We've looked at whether the service had enough resources. You're going to look at how they expended their funds, the decisions they made during the convoy. I submit that it may indeed be relevant about an expense that the board occurred at a time when this was going on, and it was a rather, I suspect, significant expense.
I'm sorry, I've missed something. You say the commission is to look into the expenses of the city?
No, sorry, perhaps I wasn't
sorry.
clear. What I said is that or what I intended to say was that the commission will be looking into the circumstances that led to the Emergencies Act. You're looking at what was going on in the Ottawa Police Service. You're looking at what happened at the Ottawa Police Services Board. And it seems to me that in looking at that issue, it may be relevant to determine what funds the board expended at this time.
I don't see it as having any relevance. The amount that was paid, I think it's been in evidence that he was paid severance, and I don't see the relevance of going any further.
That's fine, thank you. You indicated in one
And
of
by the way, your time is up.
if I might just have 2 more minutes.
I'll give you a minute and a half.
One of the things you said in your conversation with the mayor was a lot of people don't support Steve Bell, correct?
Yes,
And you would agree with me that a lot of people did not support Chief Sloly either.
yes.
And so those kinds of things are not really things that you can take into account in making decisions. Fair?
Well, I think what I was referring to in that conversation is the reason that the board had decided to go outside with the temporary hire.
And finally, my question to you is, in retrospect, because we have not had the full review that Chief Bell indicated would take place, you would agree with me that we really do need to examine what went on, why it went on, and ultimately how to prevent it for the future. We don't know who is responsible for that.
Yeah, I would agree with you that there needs to be a full examination. We need to learn from this,
Thank
lest
you.
we repeat it.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. You came under time. Okay, next is the convoy organizers.
Good afternoon.
My name is Brendan Miller. I'm counsel for Freedom Corp, which is an organization that was incorporated to represent the protesters who were in your city in January and February of 2022. First off, though I am not from here, thank you for your service as the police commissioner, or we call it the police commissioner back home.
Fair enough.
Thank you very much. I just want to start off, of course, we didn't get the recording until this morning. In that recording of your conversation with Mayor Watson, you said you had been contacted by someone within OPS who had been called off under the interim chiefship that was then in place of Steve Bell. Can you kind of explain that for me?
Yeah. A senior officer inside police had phoned and shared his version of events with me, and sort of just informing me from his perspective what was happening. He said that the day of that particular planned event, that the incident commander was changed that day, and that there was some internal disagreement, and it led to the end of that particular operation.
Okay, and so I'm just going to have to ask you to clarify, what is the event and what is the operation you speak of?
It was to a planned takeout of the intersection of Sussex and Rideau.
Okay, so the plan that got canceled so that my clients could move on and then, oh, well, that confirms what I was looking for. Thank you. Did you know about the tripartite meetings that the mayor was having with federal government elected officials on February 7th, 8th, and 10th of 2022
No.
at the time?
No,
He didn't tell you about that?
no,
Okay, and so obviously you weren't invited,
I was not invited, no.
right? And of course, that meeting was about police resources,
Yes,
right? And you're the chair of what you'll call the commission, the Ottawa Police Service Board.
correct,
And so you run that board that decides how to dole out resources to the police, right?
right.
Okay. And did you know that on January 30th, 2022, Chief Sloly had asked the city, and the city somewhat agreed to get an injunction? Were you aware of that?
On what date?
January 30th, 2022.
It's all a little foggy. There was definitely discussions about injunctions that didn't move forward. I don't think I can confirm for you exactly the dates.
Okay. The injunctions that you did discuss, did you ever discuss that the terms of that injunction would be to both remove the trucks and get the honking to stop? Is that fair?
I don't think I had that level of detail, no.
Okay. Did Chief Sloly ever tell you in any of your conversations that on January 31st, 2022, RCMP Commissioner Brenda Lucky told him not to get the injunction because it would be an official movement to another stage, that it would involve the whole country, and that anything official will spark a national response? Did he ever say that to you?
Not to the best of my recollection.
I'll ask him and Commissioner Lucky then. So you did not know that, but you did know that the Federal Police Service, the RCMP, had been involved in the matter in dealing with the protesters.
Yes,
Okay. And to your knowledge, after January 31st, 2022, did Chief Sloly ever advise to get an injunction still after that point?
there were, I believe, I mean, the timeline's just a little bit all meshed together in my mind, but I believe there were still ongoing discussions.
Okay. And to your knowledge, I just want to make this clear, because I know that you were in sort of a vacuum. So, but you did know that from January 25th to February 14th, 22, that there were multiple police services involved in dealing with this matter.
Yes,
Right. And that included the Ottawa Police Service, the Ontario Provincial Police, and the RCMP,
yes.
among
And
others that you
among
subcontract.
others, yes.
Right. And I take it that you know as well, at the federal level and the provincial level, it's not politicians that decide where to execute or carry out and apply police resources with respect to events and investigations, but it's the police agency itself, because they're independent. Right. And to my knowledge as well, and I wanted to put this to you, is there any prohibition on yourself or members of the Ottawa Police Service Board of Council contacting someone like Commissioner Lucky or the Commissioner of the OPP to have a discussion about resources?
I don't believe there's any prohibition doing that. I think the protocol, though, would be that politicians speak to politicians and police officers speak to police.
Right, but is it true with the commission that you do invite sworn members of police agencies like the OPP and the RCMP to meet with the Ottawa Police Service Board at times? And you have in this case too, I believe.
Yeah,
Right. So is it fair to say that there was nothing stopping the Ottawa Police Service Board from asking for any of the commissioners from the OPP or the RCMP to come before them in order to have a conversation about resources?
yeah, I think that's fair to say.
Okay. Can I ask, just, and I'm not trying to poke, but why wasn't that done?
Yeah, I've been asking myself that question too. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if I were doing it again, would I do that? Probably yes. But at the time, we were receiving information through the channel of the police service, and that was our primary source of information.
Okay. And you'd already discussed the company Navigator a little bit, and it was in the news, and I know they contacted you. When was Navigator retained for the Ottawa Police Service? Do you remember?
Months and months previous to this event. I mean, the board had given a direction to the police service up the communications function because we felt that it was quite inadequate. But they came back to the board with, I mean, I'm not going to get this entirely right, but the sentiment was, we don't have time to amp up because we don't have enough people to do that. So we just need to hire some help for now. And they wanted to hire Navigator because they had some relationship with Navigator. And so they chose, I know they're a crisis communications firm, but they were also providing regular communications advice to Ottawa Police.
Okay, because how it was seemed to have been spun in the media is that they were hired specifically due to Chief Sloly not being able to deal with this.
Yeah, no, that was
That
not
was
the
done
case.
way in advance.
Way in advance.
Okay, that's good. I just wanted to know that. And then I understand that when the retainer did happen, and it's good to know it was that far away, if what I'm about to ask you is correct. I understand the retainer with Navigator was $75,000 on a fee-for-service basis, but it was maybe not paid up front, but it was a $75,000 cap, which is usually less than what their normal retainer of $100,000 is. Is that about accurate?
I don't know if I actually knew what the details of that retainer were.
Okay. Now, I also understand the Ottawa Police Service had retained the assistance from a company called Advanced Symbolic Inc., also known as ASI.
Yes.
Are you aware of that? When was ASI retained?
Certainly in advance of this occasion. Chief Sloly had brought a representative from ASI to the board, basically to talk about the benefits of ASI, and he felt that there was that their services could be useful.
Okay. And what was ASI doing for the Ottawa Police Service exactly? Could you explain that? I have an understanding, but I'd like you to explain it.
I'd like Chip Sloly to explain it, if you don't mind, because I mean, I think my very, very limited understanding of ASI is that it basically searches many, many, many sites and sort of pulls out keywords to create an impression of public opinion, if you will.
Right. Would it be fair to say, and when the ASI was discussed with you, did they refer to the phrase data analytics?
Probably, yes.
Okay. So they get all this stuff and then they give you in a report or to Chief Sloly the public perception of what's going on so that Chief Sloly and his team know how to react, right?
I think generally speaking, that's correct.
Okay. Now, I want to take you to one part, and I'm wondering if you're aware of this, and it's come up in some of the production. Do you remember when it was announced, I believe the Ottawa Police Services had mentioned that they had been in touch with Provincial Child and Family Services about apprehending children in the protest? Do you remember that?
Vaguely.
Were you aware that it was Navigator who told them to do that?
No.
Thank you. Now, I just want to get into sort of your, what you had said. You stated that you had an intention to work together and put aside political differences, and it's good to hear that, and I'm sure the public is happy to hear that as well. I'm just going to have to ask you, can you tell me about your relationship between yourself and Mayor Watson?
I mean, I don't know what there is to tell. I have worked with Mayor Watson for a very long time. We have worked on many files together over the years. I think I enjoyed more confidence in the mayor until relatively recently, until this term of council, when I detected just perhaps a change in Mayor Watson's general approach, and that goes far beyond me. He had, for whatever reason, at the start of this term, decided to build more of a coalition approach to governing than he had in the past. And I wasn't part of that coalition, so I suppose in some ways became a bit more of an outsider than I had been before. But when I had worked with him on like transit commission, for example, we were landing a Presto card that didn't work. We worked very well together.
Okay. Could you agree with me that the tension also started when you decided to, you announced, at least to him, maybe privately or maybe publicly, that you intended to bring a motion to fund litigation as against Bill C-21? Do you remember that?
Well, I don't think that's when it started. That was just one of many, many, many disagreements politically we had. And listen, I don't think there's anything wrong with political disagreements. I think it's actually quite healthy for our democracy. So we don't have to agree on every issue. I think the issue is when it becomes personal.
Okay. And so moving on to the issue with the hiring of the interim chief, you heard yesterday, and in the recording we heard that Mayor Watson claimed that he had concerns about your and your council's appointment of the proposed new interim chief, Matthew Torgan, because there was not enough consultation with stakeholders, right?
Right.
Before Steve Bell became the interim chief, how much consultation was there?
You mean at the very end when he?
Right at the beginning. So when Steve Bell took over as interim chief, how much consultation did Mayor Watson do?
I don't think he did any.
Right. So it's fair to say that the issue that Mayor Watson took with your council or your board appointing a chief on the basis that there was no consultation, it's fair to say he went about it and did no consultation and had his own appointed. Would you say that?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, I just wanted to cover one point, and I believe it was covered, but just not with the specific association, because there's two police unions, correct? There's the one for senior officers and then the other one. I also understand your evidence that it was also the Ottawa Police Senior Officers Association, which is those with ranks of inspector and higher, who also did not want Sloly as their first choice for mayor or for, for chief back in 2019. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't think I really knew that until, sometime after he was hired.
Okay. And with respect to Chief Sloly's relationship, in your statement, you specifically mentioned he had issues with the relationship with the Community Health Resource Center. Can you elaborate on what that was?
Yeah, it was just an observation that I had made through the budget process in the setting of the 2022 budget. The Ottawa Community Health and Resource Centers came forward with a proposal really for some alternative service delivery in terms of addressing mental health calls and addictions calls and housing crisis calls. And there was a lot of tension through the budget process between those organizations that I observed.
Okay, and was that organization, the Community Health and Resource Centers, I take it if there was issues in the budget, it had to do with tension between funding that the Ontario Police Service was getting versus funding they were not, or et cetera? Is that what it was?
Ontario Police Service?
Oh, sorry, Ottawa Police Service. So the Ottawa Police Service was getting a lot higher funding, I take it. They wanted more funding, and was that the tension?
No, I don't think it was that. I think it was that there's a growing perspective in our community that police are responding to calls for crisis situations, like someone experiencing homelessness or someone having an addictions crisis or mental health crisis, and that isn't always the right response. And there are growing cries in the community to set up a new system where if you called 911, you might be calling for a paramedic, you might be calling for fire, you might be calling for police, or you might be calling for a mental health worker. And so I think there are a lot of voices in the community, and including community health and resource centers, that would like to see, you know, at least an opportunity where, I mean, if you might be dispatching more than one, you might dispatch fire and police and a mental health worker. But right now, police are the responders because they take up that space, not because they're necessarily trained in crisis response of that nature, or not because they're necessarily the best response. And so I think there was some tension between Chief Sloly and the community that would like to see a change in, some modest change in police response to those types of calls.
That was very detailed. Has anyone ever told you maybe you should be the chair of the police board? You know?
Not recently.
Yes. So my last question is this. Is it fair to say that one of the biggest contentions with respect to getting information from Chief Sloly wasn't so much just with the information based on everyone's public statements within your council? What they wanted to know is, can you give us a date when the protest will end? And can you give us a date if it's not going to end, how you're going to remove them? Is that fair? That's really what you wanted to know. That's what your constituents were bugging you about in all the emails.
I mean, in broad strokes, I think that's fair.
Right. And Chief Sloly, and to no fault of his own, and he couldn't tell you that because he didn't even know.
No, and if those resources hadn't arrived, or perhaps if we hadn't had extra tools like the Emergencies Act, they might still be here.
Well, and I understand the extra tools, and I guess we can argue about that. But
Sure.
Would you agree with me that if there was a like order to the Emergencies Act to remove the protesters, et cetera, as long as you had the resources that, you know, based on your knowledge as a former chair of the police service board, the police could have removed these protesters simply with a court order on the same terms. Is that fair?
I don't know if that's fair. I don't think that I'm the person to assess that.
Thank you. I'll make the pitch to him instead. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. The next is the Government of Canada. And as you come up, if I can just be clear, I'm sure you know this, Mr. Mijikovsky, is that